Seneca Falls, you've been here 6-ish times, roundabout.
That's right, yep.
How does it feel coming back to Seneca Falls this time of year?
I like it very much, and especially this year. I mean, it just blows me away that Carolyn came here 20 years ago. And, just the way it all came about and happened, and she's sitting in Clarence's ice cream parlor, signing autographs, and then you look 20 years later and look how everything changed, and now there's an It's Wonderful Life museum. I'd been hearing about it for a long time, and I was glad that I could finally come and share all these stories that she's been telling me. It's a beautiful town. Of course, all the talk about it being the stand-in for Bedford Falls was very interesting. And all the different things that happen in the movie that, those things are going on here. And then they made that great documentary that won the Emmy this last year, and they did a beautiful job. It was a wonderful, wonderful documentary, and well done. And
what is it like seeing this movie and everything around it seem to continue gaining popularity every year? It's not something that seems to have plateaued. It just keeps getting more and more popular, especially this time of year. But what do you attribute that to, or what do you think that some of the factors are that make that happen?
Well, it is a great story, and Frank Capra, was just out of World War II, and he formed this company, and he didn't know what film he was going to do, and he had optioned a few pictures, and then this story came along, The Greatest Gift, and he read the little Christmas card that Philip Van Dorenstern had sent out to 200 friends. And he thought, the story was a man gets to see what life would have been like if he had never been born. And he said, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. He said, it's the film I was born to make. And he just loved that story, and the other projects that he was thinking about, forget it. So he just concentrated on The Greatest Gift, which later became It's Wonderful Life. And then there's a reason I'm going through all this, because it's very interesting what happened to him. Then he made the film, and it flopped. And it just destroyed him, because he thought it was the greatest movie he had ever made. He said in fact, I think it's the greatest film anybody made. But what happened to this movie, if Capra had won the Academy Award, this movie never would have been what it is today. Never close to it. I was talking to Sheldon Leonard. He was doing a favor for me and talking about the movie to take back to Donna Reed's hometown for the 50th anniversary. And he couldn't make it. He said, I'd like to tape something for you. Okay. So we were talking through the taping and everything. And then I said, isn't that something that this picture was a flop, and now it fell into public domain, and now everybody's watching it. They have It's a Wonderful Life trivia parties. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. He said, something's interesting, though, Jimmy. The movie never changed.
Right, of course.
The people changed.
Yeah.
The people need that message more than ever now. And you'd ask originally, why? Well, it's because that movie makes them feel that they're important. George Bailey didn't know he was doing anything until he got to see what life would have been like if he had never been born. And then he thought, wow, we really touch a lot of lives, and we can do it for the better. And people want to think there's a little bit of George Bailey in them, and that they've done something in life. We went to Attica Prison a few years ago, and showed the film to all the inmates, and then they brought us in one night and to talk to the inmates, to ask them what they thought of the movie. How did that movie touch you? So, and they they really were very insightful. They came up with questions, and they were very well prepared, very moved by the movie. In fact, the superintendent of all 90 some odd prisons, correctional facilities, was sitting next to me. He said, "Jimmy, I know you had a tough time getting here, but let me tell you something. I'm head of all the correctional facilities in the state of New York. And if there's anyone you want to go to, consider it done." I've never seen this reaction.
Yeah.
And even in his 50th anniversary of the big the problems that they had at Attica, the riots and everything, he mentioned in his report, "It's a Wonderful Life came to Attica."
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's such a great story.
Yeah.
You would never think from that movie maybe that you would be doing that in your lifetime, going and speaking at prisons or correctional facilities,
right.
which really does touch people, I feel like, in many different ways. Do you have any specific memories from the set that stand out the most to you?
Yes, I do. And people, they're surprised that at 4 years of age, I can remember anything. I can't remember anything today, but I can at
Core
4.
memories.
Yes.
They had to have stuck with you.
Yeah. Yes. There was a scene, and Capper was always giving me business to do. I was sitting on Jimmy Stewart's lap, and putting tinsel on his head. He comes in the room. Now you go through his pockets like maybe he brought you something. Capper was always giving me business to do. And in this one scene, he's thinking of losing the $8,000, and all of a sudden he pulls me into him. And we rehearsed it 2 or 3 times and shot it a couple times. But every time he pulled me in, I mean, it was such a jerk. It was just so quick. I was wearing a Santa Claus mask around my neck, and that mask would hike up every time, and the inside of that mask was like sandpaper. And I remember scraping my cheek, and when we were doing it, I wish he would stop this, I just, because it really, it's sandpaper. Somebody doing that on your cheek 5 or 6 times, you go, but I knew enough not to go, "Oh, I know what's coming." No, I just said like we were doing it for the first time. I remember that extremely well. And also when we're leaving the living room, going to the kitchen, the older brother's there, and the girl's still pounding on the piano, but I'm following him, and Frank Capper's telling me, "Pull on this man's coattails." And then when you get here, because he told everybody, "Stop." Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed are going through this scene, and Larry's going through it. Try to ask him, "How do you spell this or that?" And he said, "Now." And then he crouched down face to face. He said, "You see where we are right now?" "Yeah, yes, sir." "I want you to say, 'Excuse me,' right here." "Yeah." "Now you keep pulling on his neck, and then when we come out of that room, when you get right here, you say, 'Excuse me.' You understand?" I said, "Oh, yes, sir." He said, "Okay, everybody, let's go." So then they start the rest of the scene, and then he tells Donna Reed, Jimmy Stewart, "Stop." And he comes back to me, crouches down. "Now see where we are now?" "Yes." "You keep pulling on his coattail, and then when we get right here, you say, 'Excuse me,' again. Okay?" "Yeah." "Okay. All right." So then, "Okay, everybody, let's go." And then we made the final one at the kitchen door, stopped everybody. Now he said again, "Now you keep saying, you'll say, 'Excuse me,' and then this man's going to say, 'Excuse you for what?' And then this is what you say." Okay, so that wasn't in the script the night before. He would always see where he was, what works. In fact, one day I was with him years and years later, and I asked him, "What's the most difficult scene to shoot in the whole movie?" He said, "Oh, that's easy. The one with you kids." I said, "Well, what happened? Didn't we do Ryder?" "Oh, no. You were all great. He said, "But there was so much going on so many levels. Here he's worried about the 8,000, and then this kid's pounding the piano. The other kid's asking, how do you spell this? You're excusing me. He had all these things going, and it'd be very easy to laugh at that scene instead of having them laugh with you. And when you see the film, what he was worried about, is this going to seem real? And it was. It was just like a family. You know, all this commotion going on. Donna Reed's decorating the tree, all this stuff, and he's destroyed.
In his own
he's
world.
going to jail, he thinks.
Right, yeah.
And it turned out beautiful. He was so great. I mean, just a great director.
Absolutely.
So, but if that film, like I told you earlier, had won the Oscar, it never would have been what it was. It took that picture to fall into public domain. It took it for all the stations in the United States could show it for free, and they liked that.
Yeah.
And so it filled up 2-3 hours of time that they could sell time to. And then it just picked up and kept going. And, you know, by 90-something, 93, Paul Peterson and I wanted to do something for the Donna Reed Foundation. So I said, you know, everybody thinks they know so much about It's a Wonderful Life. And I said, I know a lot of stuff that nobody knows because I was there. I said, let's write a trivia book so they can buy it and be at their parties and ask different questions, harder questions, whatever. Okay. So we did, and made a deal with the publisher. And so I asked the publisher, how many books do you print? How many, you know, I'd never written or done anything with a book before, so I was learning. They said, well, if we sell 5,000, you'll be doing real good. I said, 5,000? If this doesn't sell more than 5,000, I don't know the book business, but believe me, I won't be very happy. Right. Well, we'll make our money and everything. I thought, okay. And between Thanksgiving or whenever they published it and put it in bookstores, they had 12 editions before Christmas. They just kept pushing out books, you know. Oh my God, this thing went berserk. And, you know, Paul Peterson and I are very happy about it because I thought it would be a good book, and they were ecstatic, you know. So, but if that hadn't happened, if it hadn't, and Frank Capra he was a very religious person, he wanted to come out of that war. 5 years of being in war, never see through a camera or anything, and he thought he had it. And what happened was 1,000 times better than if he had won the Oscar.
That's amazing.
Curious. You mentioned how it just kept picking up steam and getting more and more and more popular. At what point did it dawn on, and you and some of the others, that something special culturally was starting to happen with the movie?
Well, for me, it was like 92 when I started to write the book with Paul. And I said, hey, this is really, something's happening here. Wow. Yeah. But now it's just gone, you know, out of sight. It just everybody talks about it. Not just the holiday classic, the AFI, in a big 3-hour special, Countdown 100 Most Inspirational Movies, came in number 1. Yeah. It just doesn't stop. It just is, people need it. I mean, things are happening now that people feel like they're being treated like they're nobodies. And, and they want to feel that I'm somebody, I have something to give. And that picture tells them, yes, you do.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And so, is it a staple in your household, in your busy life? We know that you're busy. We're going to touch base on that after, because you did many, many things after this movie, obviously. But do you watch it every single year? How many times do you think you've seen the film at this point?
Well, the thing is, it's on every Christmas Eve, and you're getting those last-minute things wrapped, and it's going on in the background. You have people over. It's there. But last year, Carolyn and I was asked by the Academy, which I've been a member over 60 years now, to appear at their new museum. And they wanted to show it and have us there to talk about it. So we went there, and that turned out to be the last time the three of us will ever be together. And now it's just Carolyn and I. And but Carol was so great. I mean, how it all started and how we all got together and done so many things over the years, and watched all of us grow together and see this film actually be what it is. But and it will get bigger. It just is, like you said, it's just people want to see it, and they don't mind watching it over and over. They see different things. They colorized it. You see different things in the background. You I never noticed that.
Right.
But Sheldon Leonard said it all. The film, it wasn't like, I'm the director's cut. I'm going to go in and not a frame was the same one in 46 that bombed is the same one that is now probably on the road to being the greatest movie ever made.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other projects you're involved in. Annie Oakley, The Ruggles, Ozzie and Harriet, Petticoat Junction, Donna Reed Show. When you think about some of the other things you were involved with over the years, what stands out from that era?
Well, it's just that I was very fortunate. I got 2 jobs. One was on The Ruggles. This is when TV was brand new. It was live each week. We did 176 shows in 3.5 years. Now, it would take them 9 years, 10 years to do that many shows.
It's a lot.
Television, nobody knew what it was. And it was a brand new network called ABC. They want this family show on. And so we did it every week. And now they had to come up with some kind of thing to be able to let other people see it. We did it on the West Coast, and they kinescoped it. Do you know what kinescope is?
Wish I could say I do.
There was a monitor in the director's thing when he's calling camera 3, 2, blah, blah. And so there's a monitor there, and they had a 16 millimeter film on the screen, making a copy of it.
Oh.
So they could make more copies from the negative of this 16 millimeter and then send it out to all the ABC affiliates all over the United States. Then somebody in 1952 came up with a great idea and put in a coaxial cable that joined the East Coast and the West Coast.
Ooh, fancy.
So then that caused other situations. Well, it's on at 7:30 at night in New York and in LA, but it's 4:30. So you'll have to do it at 4:30 for the East Coast, and then we'll go to dinner, make notes about the show, and then you do it again for the West Coast at 7:30. So we did more than 176 shows because we did a lot of them twice.
Yeah.
And so that was the Ruggles series. Then, like 6 weeks later, I got a call from my agent. I did, my mom did, and said they want to meet you at Gene Autry's studio. They're doing a new series called Annie Oakley. Oh, okay. So I went over there, and I went over there 2 or 3 times. Then they got it down to me and another kid. And of course, you're on interviews with likes all the time, so you know all the other kids that are on the interviews with you. So now we're going to meet Gene Autry and the head of his studio and the head of sales firm. So we went into their office, and the other kid went in first, and then he comes out, and then I went in, and they didn't ask us to read or anything. They just talked. And they said, okay, thank you, Jimmy. You can go out, and we'll be out there in a minute. So then the other kid and I are sitting there with our moms. They came out and said, "You're Tag Oakley," to me. And I'm like,
yes.
Wow. So that series lasted, for me, I was under contract to him for 6 years.
Wow.
I was the other one for almost 4. So I'd worked all those years and never stopped.
Yeah.
And we'd do all these Annie Oakleys, and it was so great. I was like 10 or 11 when we did the pilot. And then something funny happened that became a big rule. I did another pilot for NBC and William Morris Agency. So my parents get a call from Flying A. The series sold. We're going right away. So my parents went, I think we got a problem here. Oh, yeah, Jimmy did another pilot for, and he's under contract to them too. Right. So they had a big meeting, and the Autry people had their lawyers there, and they said, now you got to decide. You have this series, we're going. You don't know if the other one's going to go.
Wow.
So what do you want to do? And my parents said, well, we'll take the bird in the hand.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's what you do. And so they legally said you cannot make a kid act if he doesn't want to work for somebody.
Right.
So they sent that letter from us, like, and all the legal talk. He doesn't want to do your show anymore. Forget it. And I was pulled out of that and started the Annie Oakley series. The other one didn't sell.
Look at that.
Yeah, so it all worked out for everybody.
Everything happens for a reason.
Then I did that, and then when we weren't shooting the show, I went on tour. They said, the show's pretty popular, and you should get an act and do rodeos and state fairs.
Jeez.
That's where the big money was at the time. So that's what I did. And then Gene Autry liked me very much, and the show was very popular, so I brought in that younger audience, and he brought in his people. And so we did, we'd go out 10 weeks at a time.
Wow.
All just every other day, someplace else, maybe a state fair for a week maybe, but we were out there doing it. So, I kept busy all the time, and then I stopped the Annie Oakley series, and then I got a call to go out to a studio. They're doing a show called the Donna Reed Show, and they want to meet you. Okay, so I go out there, and it was the very first Donna Reed show ever made, and so I met with them and read, and then they started the show, and it was the very first episode ever made, and 8 years later I was still doing it.
Wow.
Because I just hit it off great with Donna Reed, and I was the Shelley Fabre's boyfriend, and it was great. And then, I wasn't on every week, so then Ozzie Nelson saw me on Donna Reed, and I was doing a movie for Columbia, and they said, Ozzie Nelson wants to meet you. Can you get over there today at 1 o'clock? So I asked the AD, how are you going to need me today around 1? No, you can go, but, just be back by 2. Okay, so I go over there, and the guy said, Mr. Nelson, Ozzie will be here in a second. And I always wanted to do it. Ozzie and Harriet. I love that show. And it was on the air. It started when we were finishing the Ruggles. That's how I went, wow. So he walks in. He said, oh, Jimmy, thank you for coming. And he looked at the guy. I told you, he didn't have to come over. Just ask him if he wants to do the show. We'll make the deal. I like you. I saw you last night. He said, oh, well, welcome to the show. And I said, oh, I'd love to do your show.
That's awesome.
So I started doing that. And then all these other shows, My Three Sons and Leave It to Beaver. In fact, the Leave It to Beaver, they wrote especially for me. The producers liked me so much. I had done other shows for them. And they waited until I could do the show. I mean, it's incredible. I've just had a wonderful career. I've never been frustrated, like, oh, I sure wish I could have done this or that. Everything. And then I get a call. They want to talk to you about doing a movie with Elvis. Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Elvis.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So I've been very lucky.
That's amazing.
Very lucky.
So my last question for you here. We appreciate your time, of course. Imaginary scenario. You're approached by someone, director, we're going to remake the movie. We're going to remake It's a Wonderful Life. What advice do you give them?
Well, number one, I wouldn't do it. So
So that was going to be part of the other question. Would you say don't do it?
Oh, yeah. You can't do that. You can't.
Yeah.
The closest I ever did is I did an all-star version of the radio show.
Oh, yep.
Yep.
And I said they won't be able to really compare it because you're standing up there talking with microphones. You got a live orchestra. I got Dimitri Tiomkin's estate to give me the music for this big charity event, which was filmed by PBS, and brought in all these stars wanted to do something for this charity. And we had great stars. I mean, Sally Field was there, and just about 3 or 4 Academy Award winners, and they had never done radio. And that's what interested them also. They wanted to do radio. And so we put on this thing, and it turned out great, and they did a wonderful job. I mean, and Variety and Reporter reported it, a new classic is born, because it wasn't the movie.
Right.
And they didn't say, well, Bill Pullman, he wasn't as good as Jimmy. No, it just came out of another era.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just believed it was great for what it was, the radio show.
Yeah.
So that's the closest I would ever get to saying, well, here's what Tommy Bailey would do. You'd have to get it out of that realm again. And it could be Bedford Falls.
Yeah.
What is happening in Bedford Falls today with the Baileys, that I would go along with, because you're not trying to recreate what Jimmy Stewart did or Donna Reed's approach or what Clarence would have been. It's all new, and you're just catching up with Bedford Falls.
That would be cool.
What are they doing?